So for your question, I became an activist because I was a soldier in the Israeli army. I'm 38 years old. I served 20 years ago, and I served in the Special Forces unit of the Infantry Nachal Brigade, and me and my team were snipers. And when you serve as a sniper in the West Bank and Gaza, you are inside Palestinian cities, towns, but more than everything else, you're inside Palestinian homes. Almost every night we did an operation that is called the straw window. Straw window is when you take a private Palestinian house and turn it into a military post. It means that you have to storm the house in the middle of the night, drag all of the family members from their beds, and put them in one room so they won't bother us. And then we put our sniping rifles, and me as the spotter of the team, I would put my thermal camera in one of the rooms. Then we start scanning the city. And during that time, if one of the family members wants to eat, to drink, to take medicine, to go to the bathroom, they need authorization from us. Because it's our house. It's not their house anymore.
We're going to hear from Ambassador Patrick Gaspard and Nadav Vayman about the impacts of Israel's occupation on the ground in the West Bank, the current conflict in Gaza, and prospects for security and peace in the future. So, by way of introduction, Ambassador Gaspard is the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress. He most recently served as the president of the Open Society Foundations and has an illustrious career of public service, including as former U.S. ambassador to the Republic of South Africa. Nadav Vayman is the executive director of Breaking the Silence, an anti-occupation group led by veterans of the Israeli army that shed light on the realities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Vayman served in the West Bank and Gaza from 2005 and 2008. Just a few weeks ago, Patrick visited Israel and Palestine and met with Nadav. So we're really looking forward to hearing from the both of you on some really timely issues. So Patrick, Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you so very much to Representatives Gaspard and McGovern for their stirring remarks. And thank you for all of our House representatives who made a choice to be here in this conversation. That's a choice. Human rights is a choice. Justice is a choice. Peace is a choice. I'm here fulfilling an obligation that I took up when I was at the Gaza border, met with an extraordinary woman who is a survivor of the Hamas attack. She lived in one of the kibbutz that was adjacent to the border. And after she conducted a tour and showed me where 64 innocent Israelis lost their lives and a dozen hostages were taken, she said, when you go back to the U.S., please pray for us, post for us, but also protest for us. And for me, this is a kind of an affirming protest. Also, want to add that she said to me very clearly, we need to help Americans to understand that our current government is not working towards peace and is instead doing everything they can not to be helpful to us in this moment. So that's why I'm here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend time again with Nadav. Nadav, the first question I'm going to ask you is a difficult one to ask. You and I spent real time together on the ground in Hebron, in the West Bank. I saw a number of things that were deeply traumatizing to me, but as I saw them, I realized that you were being re-traumatized. You were experiencing it all over again. I wonder, as I express gratitude to you, if you can give members of the House and others who are gathered here an understanding of your own personal journey, how you decided that you were going to become a long-term activist for peace, and that you were going to be somebody who was going to speak across difficult divides.
Thank you, Patrick, and everyone. Before I start, I just want to say that as an Israeli, I think that the number one goal of our government is to release all of our hostages and bring a ceasefire between us and Gaza, and enter humanitarian aid inside. That's the most important thing as an Israeli to say at the moment. So for your question, I became an activist because I was a soldier in the Israeli army. I'm 38 years old. I served 20 years ago. And I served in the Special Forces unit of the Infantry Nachal Brigade. And me and my team were snipers. And when you serve as a sniper in the West Bank and Gaza, you are inside Palestinian cities, towns, but more than everything else, you are inside Palestinian homes. Almost every night we did an operation that is called the straw window. Straw window is when you take a private Palestinian house and turn it into a military post. It means that you have to storm the house in the middle of the night, drag all of the family members from their beds, and put them in one room so they won't bother us. And then we put our sniping rifles, and me as the spotter of the team, I would put my thermal camera in one of the rooms. Then we start scanning the city. And during that time, if one of the family members wants to eat, to drink, to take medicine, to go to the bathroom, they need authorization from us, because it's our house. It's not their house anymore. And straw widow could be 2 hours, or 4 hours, or 6 hours, or 2 days, right? And after that ends, we just take all of our weapons and everything, and we go back to the base. And when we go back to the base, the first time we did it, I understood that we ruined the Palestinian family's life. Not because we had information, not because we want to shoot at someone, because they told us this is a routine operation. You have to be with your sniping rifles inside the Palestinian city. And I was brought up on the idea that I have to protect Israel. That what I'm doing in the Israeli army is protecting Israel. And that wasn't protecting Israel. That was controlling Palestinians. And that's a different thing altogether. So you ask me how I became an activist. I served in the IDF. And I think that as an Israeli, we have the moral obligation to speak about what we did over there. It's not a secret that belongs to me as a soldier or as an Israeli. It's something that everybody should know that is happening almost every night. Straw widows like I did. But every day, we have checkpoints and the Palestinians giving permits and now fighting in Gaza and arrest. It's an ongoing occupation of 57 years.
I'm going to ask you in a moment about Gaza and how we ended up where we're at and what perceptions are on the ground. But I want to go back to something that you said to me when we were together in Hebron. You said that the mission that you had was to continuously mow the lawn. Can you help us understand what it means to mow the lawn and the purpose of that and the psychology of it?
Yeah, so as soldiers, we are getting commands to do all kinds of operations. But one of the main commands that we are getting as IDF soldier, it's called making your presence felt. And what does it mean, making your presence felt? So all of the Palestinians would know who controls them. Throw a stun grenade in the middle of a Palestinian village in the middle of the night, or build a makeshift checkpoint. So Palestinians won't know if they need to go through 2 checkpoints or 10 checkpoints on their way to work, or to school, or to the grocery shop. And stop Palestinians and taking their IDs and question them. And by the way, now we have a new system. It's called the Wolfpack. It's a facial recognition system. It means that I'm stopping Palestinians. They take a photo of their face with a cell phone, and an app tells me what to do, if to detain the Palestinians or to let them go. Right? So mowing the lawn, it means that all of the Palestinians, all of the time, should understand that the IDF controls them. It doesn't matter if it's a nurse from a hospital, if it's a 14-year-old kid, or if it's a construction worker. All of them would feel our control.
I recognize that as you took up your advocacy and your determination to bring Hebron to Tel Aviv, in your own words, that you yourself have been under all kinds of surveillance and attack, and I'm just impressed with how steadfast you've been through all of that. But you've also, and the people of Israel have also been steadfast through the astonishing, horrific attacks on October 7th. I want to talk about October 7th and Gaza and where we're at now. I understand that on October 7th, inclusive of the 1,200 Israelis who were killed, you lost a personal friend that day as well. I wonder if you can speak to that and your reaction to the aftermath of that attack and your sense of the collective punishment that the people of Gaza have now been subject to.
Yeah, so first of all, on October 7th, a lot of us lost our loved ones. And I think basically every Israeli knows somebody that was murdered in the Nova Festival, or one of the kibbutzes, or one of the 350 soldiers that died in the first couple of hours of the attack, right? I served in a special forces team, and my commander from the army, the day I finished my army service, he called me and said, Nadav, I know you, I know your political views. I just joined an organization, it's called Breaking the Silence, or Fighting the Occupation, you should join. And I hanged the phone in his face, because I told him, no, I want to go to South America, to forget about everything. But he didn't let go. And eventually I joined Breaking the Silence, and he was my mentor in all of my first months in Breaking the Silence. And he was a resident of Kibbutz Be'eri, and he defended the kibbutz. He was a part of the first response unit in the kibbutz for 7 hours until he ran out of ammunition, and then they killed him. And for me it was hard because it was my mentor, right? But also he was a man of peace. Shachar was really a man of peace, and and felt revenge. I wanted to revenge. I was angry. I was so angry. But as an activist, a couple of hours later, I understood, okay, no, what I need to do is we need peace, right? And we need to stop the fighting over there. So that's something that I want our government, the people in Israel, would feel the same, to turn that bad energy to something that can bring us to a very good point.
So you and I are reunited here at the point of the visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu to our capital. It seems to me, after being in Tel Aviv and experiencing the massive demonstrations that were organized by the hostage families, and then the massive demonstrations for justice organized by political opposition, it seems to me that the Prime Minister is clearly on the back foot at home and perhaps has an agenda that speaks to that challenge in Israel, but also to a set of politics here. And I wonder if you have a perspective on that you can share with us.
Yeah, so first of all, we need to put everything that's happening with Gaza at the moment in context. And that context is that the main conception of Israel, that Benjamin Netanyahu is the leader of it, is managing the conflict. This is how we call it. We can build a huge wall around the Gaza Strip, and we can do military operations every couple of years, giving Palestinians humanitarian permits, and that's it. Everybody would forget about the occupation. And we can do the Abraham Accords and speak in normalization with the Muslim world, and that's it. And that exploded very bloody and harsh on October 7th, right? Our military strengths and technology, they won't stop it, right? And that's why immediately we start seeing the demonstration in Israel, right? In Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and in Haifa and Be'er Sheva. And those demonstrations got bigger and bigger, and every week, every Saturday I'm over there, right? And there are tens of thousands of Israelis that are calling for ceasefire now and releasing our hostages before anything else. So when Benjamin Netanyahu comes over here to Washington to address Congress, he's not representing the people of Israel. That's something that we have to understand. The majority of Israelis, and all of the polls shows it, we want a ceasefire and we want our hostages home. I think that, as the Prime Minister, he needs to defend us, the citizens, right? I was a combat soldier. I know that you don't leave anyone behind. I'm also an Israeli citizen. I know that our government needs to take care of us. And I'm also a Jewish man, that I know that every life matters, right? And Benjamin Netanyahu sees himself and his political way. He wants power, right? And that's why this war prolongs, right? 9 months we are inside the war. So what he's doing, what he comes to do over here is exactly that, right? He's addressing the right-wing voters in Israel more than the two houses of Congress. We saw his government, right? We have an extreme right-wing government in Israel, and he's afraid because if he will do a ceasefire and releasing our hostages, it means that the extreme right-wing parties would leave his government, right? Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And that's why this war goes on and on and on.
That's rather devastating. I want to go back to the West Bank with you, Nadav. At some point during our tour, you took me up on a hill, and you said very clearly you cannot understand the conflict, you can't understand the circumstances in the occupied spaces unless you appreciate both demography and geography. And as we round our way through Hebron, it was extraordinary to experience the kind of pockmarked map where Palestinian territory was absolutely broken up and not contiguous at all. And I wonder if you can help us understand what is going on, what exactly this means, particularly on the heels of the IDF civilian administration approving the largest land seizures last week since the Oslo Accords. I should also note that as I visited communities in the West Bank, I arrived hours after a United Nations-sponsored school had been bulldozed and after the homes of peace activist families had been bulldozed and were still smoldering, and there were children gathered up on a hill who did not know where they would sleep that evening. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, so first of all, we have to remember that we have a government in Israel that in their guidelines, it says that only the Jewish people has the right to self-determination inside Israel, and they are actively working for annexation. So that's our government, right? And settlement expansion, it's only one of the things, because we are in a record-breaking time now in Israel-Palestine, right? It's the most amount of settler violence that we ever saw, right? The biggest seizure of Palestinian land since the Oslo Accord, but also the most amount of unauthorized outposts that were retroactively approved by our government, right? And they are illegal also in Israeli eyes, right? And what you mentioned when we were in the South Hebron Hills area, so a couple of years ago, the State of Israel and the settler movement, they cracked the system, right? You don't need to build a big settlement with lots of families and kindergartens and all of that. No. You take one family. It's a sheep herder unauthorized outpost in a remote area. We were in the South Hebron Hills area, a desert area. And it's like 4 or 5 people, but 200 heads of cattle or goats or sheep. And then they get hundreds and sometimes thousands of dunams or acres to go around with their ships. And we, the soldiers, we have to protect them. Doesn't matter where they are going. And they are very, very violent. In the last 15 years, most of the settler violence are from that sheep herders unauthorized outpost. And we were in Zanuta, right? Zanuta, a cave dwellers community, a Palestinian cave dwellers community in the South Hebron Hills that was abandoned after October 7th. Because the settlers took advantage that all of the eyes of the world and Israel were on Gaza or on Lebanon, and they unleashed settler violence. And Zanuta was the largest cave dweller community that fled. They left. Why? Because settlers were very violent towards them from the unauthorized outpost next to them. IDF soldiers protected the violent settlers, right? And the community left. About 400 adults and a couple of hundreds of goats and sheep, the largest one. And 18 communities fled since October 7th, right? So this is our government that wants to make the Oslo Accords disappear, right? Using settler violence, and we have to remember, settler violence or the settlement, it's not something that it's detached from Israel. It's a part of the policy. If I'm, as a soldier, I'm not allowed to enforce law on violent settlers, means that settlers are, or violent settlers are a part of the system, are part of the mechanism of the occupation, right?
That last point is critical, and we should express thanks to our representatives here who pushed for targeted sanctions against the extremist settlers who were inciting this violence, and we appreciate their leadership on that front. Nadav, you and I have about 3 minutes left for this conversation. Here in Capitol Hill, they take their assignments very seriously. Representative McGovern gave us a clear assignment and said that he came here for some inspiration. When I left you in the West Bank, I felt incredibly inspired. You're talking about difficult things here. We were all dismayed by the reality just last week when the Knesset voted down a resolution for Palestinian statehood, calling that an existential threat to Israel. Despite all of that, what gives you hope? What gives you optimism? What inspires you in your engagement with Israelis and Palestinians? Give Representative McGovern that spark of inspiration that he came here for.
So first of all, I've got to say about the sanctions. Right? Sanctions were a very important step to show Israelis that impunity doesn't exist. Right? That settler violence is something that we need to address, and that was a very, very important step. Right? I don't want Israel to be sanctioned. I don't want to be isolated. But it was, like everybody said today, like we are allies, right? When I fought in Gaza, I had an M4 and it was engraved on the side, property of US government, right? But that's only part of that friendship. The other part is saying, whoa, stop, right? And we need to go to the next phase of sanctions. And I've got to say something. Like, I'm doing this for the past 12 years, right? Talking with Israelis and internationals. And there's something that I understood quite quickly, I've got to say, that when you speak the truth, and when you take responsibility, like what breaking the silence, we're taking responsibility of what we did. We're saying to the Israeli society and to the world, this is what we're doing, right? We need to address this. And when you speak truth to power in front of human beings, they understand that. And that gives me power it gives me energy every week when I meet Israelis. It doesn't matter if we argue or not, if we agree or not, the conversation exists. And we can see what happened with the liberal democratic camp in Israel or with the anti-occupation bloc in Israel. It gets bigger and bigger because people understand that we cannot be an occupying power forever, right? 57 years, that's too much. our forever war, right? It's too much. And I've got to say, the last couple of days that I spent over here in Washington meeting with congressmen and women, and I understood that we have a lot of allies. And that's something that Israelis should understand, that over here we have a lot of allies that can help us bring an end to the occupation and bring peace to the region.
Nadav, when I was in the West Bank, I was overwhelmed by your courage today. I'm overwhelmed and humbled by your ability to extend grace to everyone, Israelis and Palestinians alike. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patrick.